What's up, everyone? I'm so grateful to be doing this episode today. I'm blessed to be able to be in a position where we are only really trying to bring you the best possible information and the best possible people in the world. Today, I get to interview someone and really bring this to the foreground. His name is Tabb Bickell. He is the Executive Deputy Secretary for Institutional Operations. Look, we always say, like, we don't really know about where we're going until we know where we've been. And this is a man who is a veteran. This is a man who has gone through being a hostage in a prison riot. He's also a man who was a teammate, and if I have it correctly, a point guard when Sam Bowie, remember the guy who got drafted right before Michael Jordan, he was on his team in high school and got a chance to play for a championship. Right now, he's a phenomenal leader in the Department of Corrections in the state of Pennsylvania, and his leadership skills, I believe everything has led to this moment. So first of all, Deputy Secretary, welcome to Emotional Management.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this very much.
Man, I just feel really grateful to be able to speak with you. Look, basketball was a big part of your life growing up, and I kind of want to start there. Tell me about the influence basketball had on you growing up.
Well, when I was young, basketball was everything to me. I started out playing all three sports, probably like most young kids back in those days, football, basketball, and baseball. But I always seemed to excel a little more than the other kids at basketball. So I gravitated towards it. When I turned 14 years old, I used to go to all the high school games. And, man, I loved it. The Lebanon Cedars, and they were in the Central Penn League back in them days. And no league to this day can compare to the Central Penn Basketball League. You had John Harris, the Harrisburg schools, the Lancaster schools, Reading, Steelton, just the powerhouses of the state at the time. And I remember going to them and hoping one day I could be a Cedar. So we got this basketball coach. His name was Chick S. And he actually he was probably one of the biggest influences in my life to this very day. That man is very influential in the decisions and the things that I do in life. He now lives out in Hawaii. But he saw me at 14 years old, and he saw something in me. What he saw in me, I don't know, but he saw something. And he guided me along. I mean, there were times that I had to meet with him. Sometimes he had an issue with the way I would talk to somebody. So he legitimately had me read a book. And then every single day, I had to go grade myself of how I treated other people from an A, just like in school. And if I gave myself an A, he was looking for me because I had to explain why I got an A. And if I gave myself a low score, he was looking for me, why I had to do that. And he knew that he could get away with that with me because he had one thing over me. He knew I wanted to play basketball, and I wanted to play basketball bad.
That's awesome. First of all, I identify with that because as a similar age, like I played all three sports, basketball, football, baseball growing up. And basketball, I loved. It was such a great sport. It's because it's fast paced. It's nonstop. You don't have time to think. You got to master your skill set. So, what made you gravitate more toward basketball than those other two sports?
Well, I think I was a little better at basketball. I also ran track, but I was a little bit better at basketball. And even back then, that team that went to that state final, we were together from like 8th grade on, to include Sam Bowie. And I always felt, we were winning a lot of games back in them days. And this coach was the kind of guy, he would take us into Harrisburg, when we were 15 years old to play Harrisburg teams, or we would go up to out to Pittsburgh, and we would go all over the state in his little van, and we would go compete to play basketball. So I just gravitated with that group of guys, and they were all great teammates, all successful guys in life. In fact, one guy had a full boat, Penn State football. He went up there in a full scholarship. Of course, Bowie at the University of Kentucky. And the other guys, one guy, they're all successful in their own ways right now.
Well, I remember even so. The Last Dance is a documentary about Jordan and that '98 Bulls team that was so phenomenal, and so that's in a lot of people's foreground right now. But I saw something recently about Sam Bowie, who had said if there was one moment in his career he could go back on, I guess you guys lost the state championship game by 1 point, and it
That's
still
correct.
kind of gets to him.
Yeah, that was a wild game. In fact, what I will tell you, we played Pittsburgh Shenley, a powerhouse in their own right, and they really were. They're very, very formidable team, but they were huge. They were 6'10", 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", and 6'4".
Wow.
Now think about that. That's a high school. I was the smallest guy on the court. I haven't seen. I don't know if I've seen a team that big before that or since that in high school competition. So they were a good team in their own right.
That's a big team. That's a big team right there. That's
Yes,
enormous. So you play? What position did you play?
I was a point guard. I brought the ball up the court for us.
Nice. And I know Sam Bowie, he averaged a bunch of points during that year. So you must have been assist central right there.
Yeah, we learned, like I said, it's funny as you play together growing up, you find out like who the stars were until you realize how bad you wanted to win or how much you wanted to win. And you realize when you got a 7-foot, who at that time was probably one of the top 5 players in America, if you're going to win, you got to go to the best player on the team, and we were that way, and that's part of leadership in some ways. The sacrifices you make as a player, knowing, hey, I know in my heart I could have scored 10 more points a game, but we might not have won 30 games that year in a high school season if we had that type of mentality. Not just with me, but with all the teammates I had, we all sacrificed a little bit, to include Big Sam himself.
So that's a huge aspect that we'll come back to as we talk about your evolution as a leader, but it sounds like that's something that is still present with you today, recognizing that as a leader, we can't do everything ourselves. So I do this. I do this YouTube channel where we talk to people all throughout the world, and I do a radio show about emotional management. The whole point of it is this. Look, we all play a role in life in some way, and to be able to set our ego aside and allow others to shine, I believe is a key to being a really good leader.
Well, I totally agree with that. In fact, to me, that is the best thing a leader can do, is to, let other people shine. To me, that's a mark of leadership, bringing people out and getting them to reach their full potential, at any given time that they can reach that. So yes, I totally agree with that, 100%.
And I remember I did a TV show back in the day called Coaching Bad with Ray Lewis, an NFL Hall of Famer. And we were working with a coach who he would outrun his track star. He would outrun them. He'd be like, look how fast I am. And one of the things we had to say to him is, this isn't your time. As a coach, your time is to help them shine, not to beat them in races, but to teach them how to beat you. And that's a big part of it. So how that coach that guided you, having you read things and grade yourself, was he a part of that, teaching you how to set that ego aside and put team first?
Absolutely. He it was utmost in the way he approached things. He was to this very day, he sends emails out to a group of players with inspirational speeches, or he'll talk about some stuff from John Wooden, and he was definitely about teamwork. You have to have teamwork. You have to care about your other player. It's never about you. It's always about the other player and what they're going to do. His philosophy was, if you do it to the best of your ability and we all do it together and we're all pulling in the same way, chances are we're going to be successful at everything that we do.
I love that. So you graduate high school. When did you go on to the military?
Not shortly. I tried college for a little bit. Things didn't really go my way, but that's fine. It worked out well. In fact, the best thing that ever happened to me, well, of course, not running into my old coach and a lot of other things, of course, but was going into the United States Coast Guard. It was a great turning point for me too. I was young, and it was the discipline that I needed at that time in my life to refocus on where I'm going. And again, in there, it's about teamwork. In the United States Coast Guard, I worked my way up through the ranks in there, and I was in some pretty I'll call life dangerous situations where I was out in the ocean on a 44-foot motor lifeboat, me and three other guys, and I was in charge of the boat, what they call a coxswain, and we were out there in 15, 16-foot seas in the middle of the night, navigating around, and it was some very scary, tough times. So the Coast Guard helped me understand a lot in a hurry.
I can't even imagine the mental toughness of being in 15, 16-foot seas. What went through your mind? Are there memories from that?
Oh, yeah, hanging on hard. Relying on the people who were with you. Even though I was what they called the coxswain, the guy that was in charge of the whole, even though it was only a 44-foot motor lifeboat, but relying on the three other men that were with me, or women when they were on board. But we had, you had a person who was in charge of the engine room. You had a person who was in charge of the ropes, a person in charge of the navigation. And so it was everybody working together as one to ensure, and we're 30 miles offshore too, so you can't see anything out there. It's pitch black, and you're relying on each other. You're relying on the navigation that you were taught to learn by. So yes, it took all of us, all four people on that boat, in order to accomplish our mission to successfully save people and come back to shore alive.
See, I remember there's an old Zen tale about a father whose sons, he had a bunch of sons, and they were arguing, they were disputing everything, they'd fight over everything. So on his deathbed, he had the sons, he said, go get me some sticks, and each one of the sons brought him a little stick. And when the first couple sticks, he'd just break them in half. He said, look how quick they are to break. But then he took all the sticks, put them together. And once they were all together, he's like, oh, I can't break them. And that's the message you're teaching is like, look, when we're all together, we're so much stronger.
Absolutely.
So you went on from Coast Guard, you went on to, then you go become a corrections officer. And you've had some wild experiences, including, and this is no thing to gloss over, you were part of, there were Camp Hill riots back, was it 89?
Yes.
89.
October 25th, 1989, 3:04 p.m.
Listen, when you say that number, like the fact that that specifically kind of moves through me, tell us about that, because you were actually a hostage during that time. Tell us about that experience.
Well, corrections, yes, it was a very scary time. It was a very worrisome time. Can't lie, I was scared. I was in my 20s back then. So that was the only good thing, good shape. But, what I remember about it now compared to then, and I mean, the times there were very difficult, was how much more evolved corrections has become. Back then, I can honestly tell you, I became a hostage. And I was held, this on the first night, I was held for approximately 10 hours. I was the very last man released of the first night of the hostage. During that incident, they broke into a switch box, to get to us. It was my partner and I were in there together. We wound up being handcuffed, and not handcuffed in a good way, almost hogtied handcuffed. So it was very vulnerable, very scary, a lot of threats going on. A lot of cheap shots. In fact, when I came out of it the next day, I had two black eyes. I don't know, my nose was puffed up, and my ribs were hurting. But with that being said, they also put us in inmate clothing, which was also a very scary situation. But what I remember the most about it, as much as the inmates that did that, there were inmates there that helped me. And what I mean by that is they had me hogtied, and the one guy came up. He knew me from my cell block, and I asked him, can you get me unhogtied? So he got the handcuffs on the right way, which was a better feeling, if you will. And then I also got in and loosened my handcuffs up, because they had them on so tight, you started losing circulation. And then, the part about that that I remember is all the stuff, because initially they had me blindfolded, then they unblindfolded me. And I could see all the stuff that was going on. And it was very, very wild to see, very almost like, I can't believe that this is truly happening type situations. And then, the night just involved, they eventually, I asked another inmate, can you get me? Because at one time it was just me. They took my partner away. I asked them, can you get me to where the other people were at? You know, that safety in numbers mentality, or just somebody that's with me. So this guy got me over there, and then eventually that night they worked. So I don't know whatever they were doing. And again, you have to remember, you know, back in them days, you know, the radios really didn't work. If you even had a radio, one door key got you everywhere you wanted to go into jail. I mean, we're just so much better. There was really no training. And I'll tell you some other things that happened after that event. But eventually, they actually still have a tape of this where I come out, but you really can't tell it's me because they put a towel over my head. And when they were taking me down through to the E gate, is where, like, one side of the gate was where the staff were and the state police, and the other side of the gate was where the inmates and the hostages were. But when they took me down to the E gate, I felt like I was the heavyweight champ of the world because I was surrounded by these inmates and that were walking me down, but all the other inmates were gathered around. So it was like you were, you know, if you can picture the heavyweight champ of the world coming into the ring, that's what it felt like to me as they were leading me out to the staff that took custody of me.
You know, I've spent 21 years of my career specializing in working with people convicted of violent crimes. And when you're in a prison, when you're in a maximum security prison, and I think, like, you can say it so quickly, but the truth is every one of those words, it kind of moves through me. It moves through everyone, even just hearing it, let alone actually being there, like imagining being hogtied, imagining being so uncomfortable and wondering, I don't know what's going to happen next. I think what's powerful too, though, is there were some inmates who were that cruel and that horrible in way they treated you, but others who were willing to step in. Where was your mindset in some of the darkest or most vulnerable moments within that? Like, where did your mind go?
All right. So to really be honest with you, my mind, I just had a son, Tabb Bickell, who was born. And it was this happened on a Wednesday. And that Saturday, I went up to Port Jervis, New York. My nephew was playing football up there. He was a football player. So I decided I'm going to go up there because I was off, you know, that up till that Wednesday. Wednesday was my first day back. That was my scheduled days off. So I took my son up there. It was just me and my son. He was real little. And I remember the joyous time I had with that little man. And, you know, we stopped at McDonald's. You know, the things that you do as a father. You know, I took him to a football game. He don't even remember none of this, of course. But and then coming back, we hit the McDonald's again, and just the time I spent with that young little boy was really what I concentrated on when I got to those darkest moments when when the threats were coming and you weren't real sure if you were going to make it out of it. You just wasn't sure. I mean, this shit was for real. Excuse my language.
Right.
It was going on. You know, it was a ride. And if you ever saw any tapes, it was for real, man. It was happening. And so when I got to that point, I thought about that. I thought about Tabb Bickell, and that's what got me through a lot of that. In fact, all of it, to be honest with you. Just that couple days prior, that 48 hours that it was just him and I and a couple other of my family members together is what really helped me get my mind where I needed it to be.
See, to me, that lesson is beyond powerful because what you just spoke about is you found a key to get you through that moment and realizing that whatever happens, that's your concentration, that's your focus. And what I've spent a career seeing is sometimes we get focused on just the wrong stuff. We get focused on petty stuff. We get focused on little things. But when we keep our mindset on that bigger picture, it can help us to the point where someone like you who is so mentally tough, it's beyond what anyone can even imagine. People can imagine, oh, I would have been that tough. But the truth is you actually survived it and did it. And to be able to focus on your child during that time really got you through it. I think there's a lesson in there for everyone out there who's struggling right now, thinking this is a tough time. These are tough times in the world. But I think what I'm hearing you teach is, like, let's focus on the main thing that's important to you because that could transform the way you go through anything.
I absolutely agree with that. And you're right. That can focus on the pandemic now, the loneliness that people are going through, the people whose parents or loved ones have passed and they can't get to the funeral homes. And just, I couldn't even imagine it, but that's where I agree with you. You have to stay focused on the positive things and really stay that way. You can't give into it.
I say to people all the time, I definitely think if I can't sing, I can't dance. There's a lot of things I can do. One of the things I do is I bring people a sense of patience, and I do that because I work with people. Like, I've talked to people like you. I've worked with people who go through horrific things, and the fact that you go through that, anytime somebody's going through something normal, which, listen, that's big to them. And if that's what they're going through, that's what they're going through. But when I see people go through the worst of human possible circumstances and make it through, I believe that's the inspiration that the rest of us can learn from. So let's say when you're in those moments and you're in that moment, how did you get, when you go back, because when you got out of that situation, I heard, this is a legend until you confirm this, that you went right back to work right after that.
That is correct. Yes. Again, I was young. I went straight back to work. And again, that's where corrections would change, because we would not allow that at this time. We would be smarter than that to allow a person like me that went back to work. And then, of course, that second night, I also got caught up in the second night, which might have been even more. Now, I didn't actually have direct inmate contact. I don't know how much you want to really hear about it, but
give it to me. I'd love to. Whatever you're willing to share. I definitely.
Yeah. I'll put it out there. I mean, it was the second night of the riots, and when we got there, the place was secured, but it wasn't secured. I mean, I got on up an F block, and I actually went back. Remember, now I have 2 black eyes, just coming out. I got a nose that's in my thing, but I went back to work, and I went right back to the block that I was held hot, where they took me hostage at. And the first thing I saw when I got up there, and remember they had switch boxes, were inmates. Now these tiers were 75 yards long, running back and forth. I'm like, man, this ain't good. So we're starting to report this stuff, and we didn't have enough locks. Again, it would never happen today. We're just so much smarter than that, and just would never get ourselves into that position. But so what I remember, like when it started breaking loose, I remember the captain yelled over the radios, if you had a radio, abandon your post and run for it. So I heard that. We all got out and we ran. We ran over to what they call the control center at that time. And at that time, it's a blur to me, but I was in there. The inmates were chasing us. They actually had these little windows. They broke out the windows. And again, remember, the night before, corrections has changed. We actually allowed people to bring in their vehicles, their forerunners or whatever, their motorcycles could come inside these jails to be worked on. So these inmates have access to gas. So they were lighting up those cocktails, lighting them up and throwing them into the control center where we were at. So this stuff's starting to smoke out. So next thing I know, I'm looking around, because I have what they call at that time mace. There was no such thing as OC. So I'm thinking, should I mace? I don't know what to do. I mean, next thing I know, it's so smoky, I cannot find anybody. All the people I was in there with are gone. So I go into one area, and it's completely ablaze, which would have been at that time the old captain's office, completely ablaze, so on fire. So I come back out. And I run in, believe it or not, I run into an old correction officer who probably had 35 years in the time, an older fellow, okay? And him and I wound our way up into a bathroom, like the staff bathroom. And as luck would have it, the bathroom was unlocked, because it was you always had to get a key to get into this bathroom. Him and I went into the bathroom, and we could hear, we're in there for a minute. We could hear him, because right next to the bathroom was the security office. So you could hear the windows being broken, the air conditioner being pushed in. Well, the inmates were trying to get in there because that's where the drugs were. I mean, that's what I assumed. They were trying to get in there to get that stuff. So, and then you actually hear some shotgun blasts go off. I mean, all this is going on. And I got to the point where I told myself, I have to get out of here. I am no longer going to sit here with all this noise going on. And I knew the layout of that area. So the older officer wouldn't go with me, and I told him, look, I got to get out. I just got to go, man. I'm sorry, but I'm not, So I went out. I actually took off I had my uniform on. I actually took off my uniform and just ran with my T-shirt. Because in my mind, this was only about 100 yards, if even that, to the main gate. If I got a shot before anybody would see me, an inmate could recognize me with a correctional. I can sprint to the gate and get there quick enough. So I did all that, and right when that happened, there was 4 of my correctional officer buddies and a trooper were standing there. And thank goodness they were there. And I just told them, hey, look, my buddy's in there. We got to go get him. So we're in there yelling for him. He wouldn't come out. Later, I asked him why he wouldn't come out. He thought we were setting him up, like the inmates were waiting for him. So we got him out, and then we made our way to the main gate. So that was just almost, because I'm just sitting there shaking myself. In that 40 minutes, I'm sitting in that room listening to all this chaos going on outside this room, and not one inmate came in there thinking, why did I make this decision to come back into this institution? So, but made it out, and that was pretty much that's how that. Now, again, today that would not happen. We have the mental health staff, the CEP, all the stuff that we have in place would never have allowed Tabb Bickell to come back into that institution a second night. It would have never happened.
Right. But the fact that it's people like you who paved the way to shine light on that's we don't want to bring somebody right back in after that. Your mindset, what sets you up? Like, what got you through? What was your mindset as you're thinking that? Because my heart was kind of racing as you were talking. I was thinking about that run, and I'm thinking, if I'm you, damn, like I got to get through. I got to get there.
That second night, I'm not. That night, I was angry at myself of why I come back in here, and really, I was worried about. And I won't use the name of the officer. He was an older fella. He's no longer with, and he had a lot of years in. And I got to be honest with you, I really felt for this guy because he was scared to death. And, he kept praying. I remember he was praying, and I was thinking, I hope it helps, brother. You know what I mean? But I think that's just what got us through it. And then just the weight that is anybody going to come in here. And I just kept saying, we got to be quiet. We got to be quiet, because if they know we're in here, they'll come in. But they never did. But it was very horrifying. Trust me when I tell you that.
Yeah, I can't even fathom that. I can't even fathom how horrifying it is. I really believe that oftentimes men in the world, we have a difficult time acknowledging that. But for me, I've spent a career trying to say to men, like, it's okay to say, wow, I was afraid in this moment. I was anxious in this moment. How could you not be? And what I've seen, because I've sat with people, some of the toughest fighters in the world in the UFC, toughest inmates in the world, what I've seen is we all, as men, we also have a 3-pound brain, and we still are going to be impacted by this. I don't care how tough you are physically. So you were going through this. Your mindset, there was something that got you through. I don't know what it was yet, but can you tap into what got you through? Like, what was that mindset that got you through?
Looking back on it, I just think, I love the Department of Corrections. I really did, even through all that. I never really, thought about what truly got me through it. My son, I thought about that. There were times afterwards I really thought about going into another line of work, but I never did that. And even after that, if that's where we're going, there was a lot of support staff that I got to talk to, people that I knew, like my one buddy Tommy Simpson. He played on a high school basketball team, but he had a tragic accident where he was paralyzed from the chest down, and he's been like that since he's 17 years old to the very day. And I remember him calling me, and the calls I got, that's what helped me. The calls I got from people that I haven't talked to in years were calling me to see how Tabb Bickell was doing, or getting me letters. Somehow they got my address. Remember, this is the era before cell phones and internet and all that stuff. But they found me, and they reached out to me. And somehow, not thinking back on that, doctor, that's really what truly did help me. The people who I didn't think even thought about me anymore cared about me and were generally concerned about how Tabb Bickell made out in this when they heard about that I was involved in the Canto riots.
That's a direct thing people can do today. Like, because people are going through stuff today, whatever they're going through, but the fact that people reached out to you to kind of get maybe those extra sticks, like that guy, that Zen story,
right,
to make it stronger. People reached out to you, and that's what helped you get through it. People can do that right now. Like, because like you said, this happened before cell phones and all the instant media stuff we can do. Yeah. So now
what we're doing now.
Yeah. So people can do this. This is something that every one of the viewers out there, everybody watching this, think about people in your own life. I just want to take this moment. Think about everybody in your life who might be struggling. You can reach out to them, and it might just be a quick phone call. Maybe like, hey, I'm thinking about you. It doesn't have to be anything special. You don't have to know what to say. Just, I'm thinking about you. Because that sounds, to me, that hits me on a different level.
Yeah, you know what you just said is so true. People will never realize. In some ways, they saved me, I guess I should say. And I'm glad you brought this out of me, because I almost forgot about the people that reached out and truly, in some ways, saved me, and the things that they said to me, and the conversations later, that we had. And it was very important to me to have that support. And I'll also say this, being an old Coast Guard guy, an old high school athlete, I never thought I would ever talk to a psychiatrist. But I had, again, one of those people that reached out to me said to me, look, I know a good guy. You should really go talk. And I'll tell you, I did. And I'm not afraid to admit it. It helped me immensely talking to this individual. He was a young guy. He was honest. He was straight. And I respected that about him. And so that helped me a lot there, too. So I have no problem telling anybody I did that.
No, and I think to me, that's the epitome. I often say, like, even on my own show, I'll say, listen, I struggle with anxiety. You look at me, 6 feet, 250, tattooed. Listen, I struggle with anxiety. It's called a human brain. We have a 3-pound brain. We're all going to experience emotions differently. And to be honest, I think it's tougher to be able to actually admit and be like, yeah, I was vulnerable in this moment, because how many young men out there are like, I'm not telling anybody I feel weak. Like, honestly, I work with football programs all over the country, and there was a young man in a big-time football program. He came up to me. He said, when you talked about how you have fear, but you're working through it, he said, that hit me, because I've always walked around going, I'm not afraid of anything. He said, but the truth is, and this was when no one was around, he goes, I am scared of a lot of stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's called being a human being. How are you supposed to protect your family or live if you're not afraid of anything? Like, you need to have that healthy level of fear. So I love that you've been able to talk to people about that. The other thing, too, is oftentimes when people come to me, they'll be like, man, I didn't know this is what it was going to be. That is what it is. You just kind of get it off your chest. You're able to say it. It releases so much stuff for us.
Absolutely.
This is like, to me, like, I got chills. I'm going to get inspired by you. When this all built into your leadership principles, because you are at a hugely high level. Like, you actually oversee all the superintendents. For people who aren't involved in corrections, what that means is maybe you watched Shawshank Redemption. You know what a warden is. A warden runs a prison. And what you do is you're in charge, 25 state prisons, of all the people who are wardens, or what we call superintendents. And how has everything you've gone through, like, how does that impact the way you influence all these superintendents?
Well, I just think, a lot of them know my background. I think that brings me a little bit more credibility. I think that, by sharing, I also, as you might not know, I worked my way through the ranks. So I'm probably one of the few that came from the correctional officer trainee ranks all the way up through to the position I'm at. And of course, I'm very lucky. There was a lot of mentors and coaches along the way that got Tabb Bickell where he's at. He certainly didn't do it on his own. In fact, I couldn't have did it without a lot of other people. And I do tell the superintendents that, the one thing is, when you run a jail, I'll never forget the first time I pulled in Huntington. And that thing said, when I was superintendent in Huntington, which is the oldest state, built in the 1880s. It's an old school jail, and I loved it there. But I'll never forget the first day I pulled in there, and it had superintendent SCI Huntington. I pulled my car, and I said, my whole Wessel knows what the hell he's doing. Put me in charge of this place. But I always talk to them staff about, you're never alone. There, even to this day, I'll reach out to correctional people, not just superintendents. I'll reach out to correctional officer ones that I've known through the years that I respect to the utmost, and I'll bounce ideas off of them and get there, because they're ground level people, to get their opinion. Superintendents, so I always try to bounce a lot of stuff off as many people as I can. As you know, in some of these positions, decisions just have to be made. But there's always times that you can try to get other people's opinions or the ground level people who's actually doing these jobs now, get their input to really try to get to a good solution.
Well, you and I both get to admire one. We have a similar person we admire a ton, one of the great leaders I believe in the world. I think he's a phenomenal leader. Secretary John Wetzel, who heads the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, he kind of leads by that example. He kind of shows that gratitude toward people. And like you and I kind of know him on a different level, so we see his heart. He really does genuinely appreciate the people and what they do. I don't think people even realize that extent. You do too. I hear it in your voice. I feel that way. I walk through prisons. I thank our officers and our staff all the time for just being there, because it's so, people take that for granted. Like I've said this, we're going through a tough time, right? Quarantine, all this stuff, COVID, but nurses, doctors absolutely should be thanked and praised up and down. They absolutely would. I thank them to the nth degree. But our officers, they go in there day in, day out. Just like you came back to work the next day, our officers go in there, and that gratitude kind of goes a long way. So I think that's a huge part of leadership and what you're doing, like that gratitude of telling them, like, you're not alone. We're in this together, and we are grateful for what you're doing.
Absolutely. The people, the staff, the men and women that are going to these institutions on a daily basis, I don't understand. I don't think people truly understand the bravery of these people. And, going back to Secretary Wetzel, yes, sometimes I'm not sure staff do understand that he is one of the most staff-driven, caring people that I've ever met. And if he wasn't, Tabb Bickell's in his 33rd year of corrections, he wouldn't be here. And I can tell you that. I wouldn't work for anybody that, if staff isn't first, then we have issues. Staff have to be first. These are dangerous jobs to begin with, and so now, as we kind of talked a little bit this morning, there's a lot of fear on both sides of inmates, and I mean, staff understand that inmates have families, and there's just a lot of concern on both sides, and all that has to be recognized.
It is. So my whole podcast is called Emotional Management. Talking about managing these emotions, you've already given like insight. I don't think you'll even realize how much will impact people all over the world. We're blessed to hear from people from every country. So your words will already impact them. But if you could step back and think, what is your advice to help people get through difficult situations? Maybe it's a mindset, a mentality, whatever it is. How would you help? What kind of advice would you give to the world about this?
I think, I think the best thing to do is first of all, understand it. I think reaching out to people, talking to people, whoever that might be, if you have an old coach or an uncle or an aunt or somebody you can reach out to that you can talk to and just, tell them how you're feeling, and somebody that you trust, and let them give you feedback, or even just a coworker, whoever it might be, a bartender. You're not allowed to go in there now, but, just talk to somebody, because I truly believe that there is good things that are going to happen at the end of all this, and anything else that you deal with in life. I mean, when you look at my situation, going back to, what happened to me on October 25th and 26th in 1989, I would have never dreamed possible that I'd be in a position. So I'm very lucky that I'm in now. But again, as I said earlier, it's by the people that got me to this position. And, by me reaching out and talking and having people help me and accepting that help, knowing that, you don't know it all, even no matter what level you're at, you just don't know it. But if you are down, talk to somebody. Communication, to me, it's the most critical thing in the world. And even if you can just do it to somebody else, call somebody else and brighten their day. I'm telling you, that saying it's better to give than receive, there's so much truth to that, man. If you can just reach out and make somebody feel good, man, it makes you feel even better, and that's the start of it all to me.
I believe that. And to watch a powerful man who's gone through so much be able to articulate that, I think that hits home in levels that people, I hope, can really, truly appreciate. I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. I feel so grateful. I know people at Cover Corrections Outreach for Veterans and Employee Restoration, and Power Parole Outreach for Wellness and Employee Restoration helped us set this up, and I'm grateful to them because I believe the world, this message that you have, what you did, like, I'm honored to get to sit here with you. it's going to sit with me for years to come, because what you just said too about reaching out to people or being able to talk about that. There are so many young men going, I'll be weak if I do that. Look at this man who just has been a veteran, has been gone through literally being a hostage, and still comes through as a strong leader. And if he's saying reach out, like I say reach out, I believe it's important for us to reach out to people. And then if you have the strength, go ahead and reach out to others. If you're in a good spot, reach out to others. Help people get through this. Executive Staff, Deputy Secretary Tabb Bickell, thank you so much for doing this show. Appreciate you a ton.
Hey, thank you for having me, Doctor. It's been good, and I appreciate you too. And I know that I tried to get you up there to Somerset, and I know you got up there. I mean, everywhere you have gone in our facilities, and I mean this, you have made an impact on inmates and staff, and that means a lot to me, more than you could ever imagine. What you have done for our staff and our inmates. So I appreciate you too.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to everybody out there watching. Listen, thank you for tuning in. Take these messages to heart, because the messages that we're watching this phenomenal human being teach are messages. This isn't calm. We don't have to go through science classes to understand this. We need to take this lesson and apply it. Pick up the phone, call somebody who's struggling right now. If you're struggling, pick up the phone and call someone, because I promise you, you can get through this situation. I always say there's a beginning, middle, and end to every emotional situation. And when you can watch a human being as profoundly strong as this human being say, I went through being hogged, I can't even fathom it, went through it, got through that information, focused on his son, and made it through. I believe all of us can focus on what is important to us and get through these tough times. So to everyone out there watching, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, as always, I wish you much peace.